What's going on from the Superbook.com sports desk? I'm Robert Walsh. Nashville SC has some new minority owners. Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Nashville Predators' Philip Forsberg are part of the new set of minority investors that have acquired a stake in the franchise. Also included are Giannis's brothers. The terms of the investment were not disclosed. Vanderbilt last night. How about those Commodores? Upset number 23 Kentucky, 68-66 in Lexington. It is Vandy's first win in Rupp Arena since 2007 January. Jordan Wright hit the game-winning shot with under 3 seconds remaining. He finished with 23 points. And Tennessee's Zakai Ziegler suffered a torn ACL in his left knee during Tuesday's game against Arkansas and will miss the remainder of the season. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Okay, welcome into day number 3 in Indianapolis, live from the NFL Scouting Combine. Hope everybody's feeling right and living well. Morale looks like it is low around the Indiana Convention Center. It's a little quieter. It's a little more hungover. I think just generally, vibes not quite as good as when we got here. I think we as a team, Kirby is here, Lucas is here, Robert is back in the studio.
300 miles away.
Are you complaining about having to, hang out with us but not really hang out with us?
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear anything about what y'all are having fun doing or the good food you're eating or the funny stories Kirby's telling. Because listen here, this is what I got to deal with at home while y'all are out gallivanting around Indianapolis. My girlfriend had a dadgum dental surgery, so I'm having to deal with that there. I'm having to deal with her. I'm having to deal with y'all here. I'm having to hear all the fun stories while cats are jumping all over me and my washer and dryer ain't delivered to my house yet. Everything is falling apart around me while you guys are having the time of your life, and I cannot hate it more.
Is it possible to have the time of your life in Indianapolis?
I assume that you guys are.
Last night.
I know I got a tattoo, and I don't know where it came from or why I have it.
Or why Robert's like, it sure sounds like you guys are.
I hate you guys so much.
Kirby's tattoo, it's in a place that, would not be seen publicly right now if he was wearing a suit, I suppose.
I fully support Robert in this.
And I don't know why it's Lucas's name in the play.
There's 2 or 3 of them. I'm like, what the heck?
Well, they're not, it's not like we went to a professional tattoo parlor.
No, I think a guy I just gave that guy $10 on the street.
No,
it's corner.
Kirby for sure got a prison tat last night, Robert.
I hope it gets infected.
Sure
I'm sure it is.
I feel for Robert, and also because this trip would be way more fun if Robert was along for the ride.
Whoa.
That makes me feel,
you know what?
almost worse. Like,
pay him
we
to
wish you
ride
could have
with me
came here,
around
but,
town.
you didn't.
Okay, 615-737-1045. Let me take the steering wheel back for just a hot second is how you join the conversation. We're going to have a lot more fun. We're going to talk about Tim Kelly, the new Titans offensive coordinator, what he had to say, because those comments have not yet been addressed, and I definitely have some thoughts on his first public appearance. But I think we should start with, how everything is going so far at this point, Kirby. I need your assessment because this is not as a unit. This is the first time that we've done this.
Oh, yeah, we broke the ice last night.
A rookie.
It was a lot of fun.
The tone, I don't know the connotation.
It could mean anything.
It could literally mean anything. So through 2 days, now on day number 3, 2 nights and 2 days so far, what is your assessment of the performance of the Buck Reising show in Indianapolis?
Well, I hope my math skills are better than yours this morning with the calculation of how long we've been here. I thought we had a great time.
Less hours.
I wish I could remember it, but did not we meet? I think I bought the new OC a drink last night at one of the places. We had a lot of fun.
It's entirely possible. There were many people. That's what Indy is for, and that's why all these deals get done. Honestly, like with an actual football note on this stuff, like this is why Indy is such a popular place for the combine. For not just the workouts will start today. The linebackers, there will be linebackers on the field at Lucas Oil. throughout the course of the afternoon. The workouts will go through the weekend with all the different position groups. So you keep an eye out for that. We'll start seeing bench press numbers and 40 times and manners, all those other things. But with everybody in the same places, the same restaurants, the same bars, that's why it's such a productive time of year. That's why it really sets the table for the rest of the NFL season, whether that be the draft, which is, of course, the thing that we're here for, or free agency as well. But with everything that's going on at this point, the host city, Indianapolis, they're potentially in the running for the number 1 overall pick. And at this point, Colts general manager Chris Ballard speaking yesterday about the idea of moving up from 4th overall to number 1, where the Chicago Bears currently sit. We're going to talk to Carmen Vitale of Fox Sports about this. She covers the NFC North. And, of course, with the Bears having the run of the combine, they're the belle of the ball at this point. Listening to Colts GM Chris Ballard talk about what it would take for them to trade up to go and get a quarterback, of which they are in desperate need, the comments were pretty interesting. This was the Colts GM yesterday.
Well, one, and I know this is coming up because I know all the speculation out there. One, to move up, there's got to be a guy worthy of it. Okay, I know everybody in America is going to say, like, this is what's great right now. Everybody has just automatically stamped that you've got to move up to 1 to get it right. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't. But that's going to be the narrative, and that's okay. Y'all got to write something. You got to keep the news flowing. So, but I don't necessarily know if that's the right course of business. When we meet as a staff and we say, okay, this is what we need to do, this is the guy for the next 10 to 15 years, and we think he's the right guy, sure, we'll do it. But who's to say we won't get one at 4? Well, 1.
So that's Chris Ballard speaking about the situation for the Colts. And the idea that they would try and get in the hunt for the number 1 overall pick, of which many teams reportedly are bidding on, with a better quarterback class, a better crop of quarterbacks than we've seen, I think, in the last couple of cycles. Because, we talked about the 5 that went in the first round 2 years ago, and that there were 5 teams that needed quarterbacks in the first round, certainly with San Francisco trading up the way that they did to go get Trey Lance. A sign of things to come, and obviously that hasn't quite come to fruition. But it seems like at least Bryce Young, I don't know about C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young seems to be viewed as a higher-level prospect than a lot of the guys that we've seen come through at least the last couple of processes, not just last year as a down class, but even going back to 2020.
Which could literally change in the next 2 days.
Yeah.
And he's not throwing, which is important, but he's going to come in, he's going to do his weigh-ins, he's going to speak to the media tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern time. I think he pretty much kicks things off with player podium stuff tomorrow.
Yep.
So it could all change in the next 2 days. But it feels like if the Colts were to trade up to 1, that, to me, based on what we just heard from Chris Ballard, based on the exchange at the press conference, introducing Shane Steichen between Ballard and Jim Irsay, feels like if they were to move up to grab the number 1 pick, that would be more an Irsay move. And if they were to stick at 4 or trade back, that would be more leaning towards what Chris Ballard would want to do.
It certainly makes a lot of sense. And then there's
it's based on how they speak publicly.
Right. And no, I see what you're saying. And then there's the wrinkle of, okay, well, we talked about the coverage that's going to be around the Jalen Carter story and how it's going to become more about a player and his draft stock than it is about the situation that has him facing these charges of reckless driving and racing in connection with that crash that killed one of his teammates at Georgia and a recruiting staff member. But not to be cold about it, the idea that we are talking about teams trading up for the first overall pick and that Jalen Carter is considered a top 5 draft pick. I understand that kind of, separating the two is not easy to do, but is that a wrinkle that does affect teams jockeying for that top spot? I think that has to be in consideration when you're talking about everything.
Yeah, and the question becomes, okay, so is Will Anderson now the clear-cut number 1 non-quarterback prospect in this draft?
And I think most people would say yes when given the situation where there's offensive linemen that you like, but they're not necessarily like, I don't think there's one that's going to go in the top 3.
Yeah.
Right? You're looking at the corners where there are a lot of talented players. It's considered a deep class, but not necessarily where there's that transcendent talent. It's not a Jalen Ramsey out there that would go top 3, right? So you're looking at
And they
tight
just
ends.
started speaking, by the way. I'll go over and talk to Keely Ringo, who will probably be a first-round pick.
One would think. Now, the tight ends are a topic of conversation. There could be multiple that go in this year's first round, but not in the kind of range that we're talking about. So I think with everything, and by the way, Jalen Carter, reportedly, according to Adam Schefter, he has come back to the combine in Indy today to go through his interview process and to do his measurements, among other activities, according to sources that Adam Schefter spoke to. He has not been expected to participate in workouts at all, even before his arrest on Wednesday. So just to kind of refresh, he was booked on a couple of misdemeanors Wednesday, released after posting a $4,000 bail, according to online records, and he has an arraignment hearing in the case that is now set for April the 18th, which is a couple of weeks before the NFL draft.
And talk about how that would change the preparation for a combine week for Jalen Carter. Coming in and the questions that you're expected to receive, and probably having to sift through some of the character issue stuff that come out, and then suddenly this bombshell drops. You got to peel back. You got to go, get arraigned, do all of those things, get out on bond, and then reset and say, okay, now everything's going to be geared towards this incident and what happened on January. What was the night? January 15th, or whatever the date was.
January 15th. No, and that honestly, that's an important point because this is the biggest job interview of these dudes' lives, right? Bar none. And the amount of prep that their representation and their management teams do with them heading into these things where these guys have not been in traditional job interview settings, and you're working through these kind of things and you're repping these kind of interactions and saying, okay, we know this about this coach because this is what happened with one of our clients last year, all these different things. There are literal months of prep that go into this, not just on the physical side, not just on the training side, but on the presentation side of things. And this completely throws a wrench into a lot of it. On the day that he was expected to be in front of 400 squawking media members that were going to ask him a whole bunch of different questions than they were at the start of Wednesday morning.
Which I guess will not happen anymore then. He will not speak to – that's the one big difference. He already wasn't going to work out. Now the only thing is he won't speak with media.
So we'll see what continues to develop on that. Obviously, there will be a lot of conversations throughout the course of the day. And like Lucas said, he's going to go over and talk to a lot of the corners that are going to be up on the podium. Carmen Vitale of Fox Sports. She covers the NFC North for Fox, and she will talk to us about the Bears, the number one overall pick, and the teams that are jockeying for it. Coming up next, live from the Combine, it's 104.5 The Zone. Did you know the cost to rebuild a home has increased by almost 50% since 2019? Most home insurance does not account for inflation, but with Country Financial, it can. You can call Joe Easley at 615-824-7020 for a quote and ask about their additional replacement cost coverage. I've had a serious claim when I went through the tornado in 2020, and trust me, if it happens to you, you want someone like Joe to have your back. Country Financial provides insurance and financial services to help you prepare for the most important moments in life. Now's the time to make sure that you can rebuild if something happened to your home. So call Joe today, 615-824-7020. Welcome back to the Indiana Convention Center here on 104.5 The Zone. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. We always like seeing our friends at the table. There's been a lot of them, although less today. Morale is low. The
What is it? Thursday?
Yeah.
What day is it?
Everybody looks like it.
What time is
At
it?
this point. Carmen Vitale, not you, Carmen. Carmen Vitale is here with us.
Nice save, Buck. Nice save.
The sound. How are you?
I'm good.
Are
I'm
you?
good. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I promise I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm better than I sound. We'll put it that way.
I think people are just visibly shook at this point. This was a lot easier at 24 than it was at,
Oh
than
my!
it is at 29.
That has been the biggest thing where it's just I've been smacked in the face with the fact that I'm on the wrong side of 30 now.
Well, listen, the grind never stops and everybody is here so far, although more and more people seem to be dragging in as the hour gets later. Which, sounds about like the combine last night. Anyway, Bears have the number 1 overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell has your offseason been like?
It's been very interesting because I think that obviously the narrative around are they going to move on from Fields? Is that going to happen? Is that worth it? Ryan Poles, didn't draft him. Does he want to hitch his wagon to a guy that he didn't evaluate? I don't think that they've started kind of setting up Fields in this offense, tailoring the offense to him. I can't think that you want to get rid of all of that for an unknown. That being said, Ryan Poles said it again this week that he'd have to be blown away by one of these quarterbacks in order to move on from Justin Fields. And I think that that's the right call.
Which is big.
Yeah. And I think that that's the right call because you have so many holes. And I implore Bears fans to think of this as a multi-year process because if you trade down, now you're not only looking at extra capital this year, you're looking at maybe an extra first-round pick next year. So that even if Justin Fields doesn't end up working out, now you're armed with 2 first-round picks next year in a strong quarterback class headlined by Caleb Williams, Drake May, that, all right, now you can take someone and reset the clock on that while having already built a better situation for a new quarterback to come into. So I think that the trade down aspect of everything is kind of a win-win for them. But now with all this Jalen Carter news coming out, now it becomes a question of, is that worth it?
Yeah.
Because I think the overwhelming consensus of what people want the Bears to do and what made sense for the Bears was to move down to that 4 spot with the Colts, who need a quarterback. And at that point, because if you think 2 quarterbacks are going before you pick at 4, Arizona might need a quarterback, but they're not going to take one. They're
A subtle shot.
Subtle shot. Whatever, I don't care. I don't cover them. They
You never know, Carl.
But it's true. It's true. But they're widely thought to take a defensive player.
Yeah.
But you had Will Anderson and Jalen Carter at that point, and you can use either of those guys if you're the Bears. You would be ecstatic with either of those guys. Well, now with Jalen Carter in the trouble that he's in, I don't know that it's ultimately going to affect his draft stock a ton because the NFL tends to have a short memory when it comes to things like this.
Sure.
Especially with not a lot of tangible consequences. But the Bears have preached how character is really important to them, integrity, all the other stuff. And they've operated like that up until this point under Poles' tenure. Now, if you say that that's what you want and you take a guy that's had off-field issues, you're going to have to atone for that. And
Yeah.
I don't know that you can do that at this point. So now if you want one of those defensive players, you might have to stay at 1 to get Will Anderson.
Which is just crazy to think about at this point. Carmi V is where you follow her on Twitter. She covers Fox. She covers the NFC North for Fox Sports.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the Colts, and Chris Ballard was talking yesterday. I don't know how many of these other have you been attending a lot of the teams' press conferences of GMs for clubs that might move up to the Bears pick this week, or has it been mostly the teams that you cover?
It's been mostly the teams I cover. I mean, balancing 4 teams.
Yeah, listen, I can barely keep track of one.
I know. It's my first season on the beat too, so it's one of those things where I wanted to make sure that I was focusing on the guys that I haven't had a chance to get to know as much.
Sure.
But no, I mean, I'm still, obviously paying as much attention as I can, even if it's indirectly with some of those teams that are trying to come up. But please tell me what.
No, I mean, he's just.
Ballard said yesterday.
Let's go ahead and Robert, if we can, play the audio of Chris Ballard talking about what it would take for the Colts to move up for that number 1 overall pick, because they're not doing a ton to deny the widely speculated discussion.
Their owner owner wasn't doing a ton to deny that.
Maybe we play some Dream or Say later. Maybe we do that. In the
At your own
meantime,
peril.
let's hear from Chris Ballard, shall we?
Well, one, and I know this is coming up because I know all the speculation out there. One, to move up, there's got to be a guy worthy of it. Okay, I know everybody in America is going to say, like, this is what's great right now. Everybody has just automatically stamped that you've got to move up to one to get it right. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't. But that's going to be the narrative, and that's okay. Y'all got to write something. You got to keep the news flowing. So, but I don't necessarily know if that's the right course of business. When we meet as a staff and we say, okay, this is what we need to do, this is the guy for the next 10 to 15 years, and we think he's the right guy, sure, we'll do it. But who's to say we won't get one at 4?
Why is he lying to us, Carmen? Why is this man actively out here lying to us?
That screams trying to maintain any sort of leverage when your owner came out and said, we want a young quarterback. And, like, quarterbacks rise, and if you want to have your guy of the future that you love, you have to pick at 1.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you have that kind of conviction about him, I mean, and that's the way that people are talking about Bryce Young more than anybody else. But, like, what has the discussion been around the clubs that you cover with C.J. Stroud? I mean, it does seem like people are more leaning towards Young as the consensus best prospect in this draft. And there are tweets today about how much he weighs at this point. We're getting closer and closer to the numerical, just getting buried with numerical data, and I can't wait for hand size.
God.
Drown me in hand size.
God
sports
bless
talk
us
radio.
all.
Oh, we deserve it. But, like, what's been the conversation around CJ?
Can I throw in a curveball there?
Please.
Anthony Richardson.
Oh, my God. I don't want to. I don't get it.
Listen, I don't necessarily either.
All right. Explain.
But I'm just telling you what I hear.
Okay.
Talking to scouts, coaches around the league. And I actually, a couple weeks ago, is when I first kind of inquired with some of these guys, like, all right, are we not talking enough about Anthony Richardson? Like, I started hearing that. I was like, is he top 5 potential? And
he's going to test better than any of them. I mean, he's athletically freakish in the ways that make these scouts go crazy, because what can we do with that guy once we get him on our working under our coaching staff? Anyway, go ahead.
No, and it was I mean, they'll know more after meeting with him, but like, as long as he can break down his own film, I don't see. They're like, yeah, he's a very potential top 5 pick.
Yeah, I mean, the testing on all this is going to start. Obviously, there's linebackers on the field today. Is there a prospect here that you were you haven't necessarily that you were looking to talk to? I guess in the media availability that we've had so far. Not every player has gone, and the corners are currently going. Safeties and kickers specialists this morning. Was there a prospect interaction that you've had so far that you liked, that you didn't like? What have been your takeaways from the avails that we've had?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the Bears having such a influential draft pick and needing any position along the defensive line right now, or a lot of places on the defensive line. It was interesting to hear from the defensive linemen. I mean, not that it should come as a surprise, but I mean, Will Anderson, I think, blew everyone away with how eloquent and passionate he was on the podium. Listening to him was, I mean, you got it. You know, not like, obviously you pull up the tape and you watch him, and he's like one of the guys now that could be the first overall pick.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't shock anybody, but to hear the conviction that he has, and, you know, how he doesn't take anything for granted, I think he just blew everyone away in that aspect of it. So it's like he just seems like the whole package now. But I'm actually very interested to hear from the corners today, because this is such a good corner class.
Yeah.
Such a good, like, you could potentially have double-digit corners going in the first 2 rounds. So I'm very interested to see, you know, those guys. I think that defensive backs in general are a little more interesting, because their personalities.
They're always chirpy.
They are.
at least now. Not all of the good ones are chirpy, but there's a lot of them. A lot of them that tend to carry that personality trait, I would say, and they typically have a lot to say. And, you know, I mean, the Combine, you didn't do Senior Bowl this year.
No, unfortunately. It was my first year not doing it in a while.
Senior Bowl is a more natural environment for these guys to interact, because it's prior to a lot of the agent preparation that they're going to go through before they get put in front of teams and put in front of us and all these different things. But it's been a good showing of just general like transparency with a lot of the players, like Tyree Wilson yesterday talking about his foot surgery and kind of where he is with his health at this point. And
how many times do you think that he had to show his wingspan yesterday?
A lot. Probably as many as DeJuan Jones. Ohio State right tackle who's literally got the wingspan of an actual crane. So the top corner in this class for you is who?
It's hard. Going into the maybe like about a month ago, I had someone really, really push Keely Ringo out of Georgia.
Yeah.
I can't speak. Clearly, it's Thursday.
Yep, it happens.
Keely Ringo. I don't know that he's necessarily the first, but like, again, Georgia at this point is a professional program.
Yep.
These guys have probably, like Bama, Georgia, these big programs have the easiest transition into the league. And at corner, that's really important because, again, the understanding that you're going to get burned, but you got to have a short memory, you got to get right back into it, that's a maturity thing that only comes from having reps at a really high level. So any of the guys out of the big schools, I think that matters. I don't necessarily think it matters for all positions, but I think for corners in particular, it matters.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think that he's going to be maybe he has the higher floor and maybe a little bit of a lower ceiling, but I really, really like what I've seen from him.
I mean, he's one of the biggest corners in this draft. 6'2", 210 pounds at this point. He's incredible out there on the perimeter.
I feel like they're all getting bigger.
At the corner spot?
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of like wide receivers. You know, it's just like the natural evolution of the sport.
Yeah, that's fair.
As soon as you start having these pterodactyls out there catching passes, like you have to have somebody who's
a lot of like dinosaur animal associations
wingspan.
This morning. But
Wingspan. I'm working on it. I'm trying my best.
Oh, I love it.
It's a tough scene, but I mean, honestly, like. It's just like in the NBA when you start to see guys who can work on the perimeter at the size that you're not typically accustomed, and that starts to become the evolution of the sport. You start to see the same thing in the NFL. It's just that different physical body types are starting to trend in those directions once you start to see the initial kind of market correction, I guess. In the same way that wide receivers are getting paid $25-30 million a year, you're probably going to see the corner market take a jump that way.
Aaron kind of did last year.
No, for sure. I mean, the Jags. The Jags kind of, the Jags tend to do that with the market on a regular basis. Although it's tough to point and laugh anymore as they
no. I mean,
are
especially
sitting
on the
top
wide
of
receiver side of things, Christian Kirk worked out pretty darn well.
Now, you brought up the idea of Georgia being a pro program at this point. Robert, I don't know if you have available to you the Nolan Smith audio from yesterday of him talking about the idea that Georgia is doing more with less. Is that something that you have available?
With less at Georgia. So we play with a light box. That's what Coach Smart says. We play with 6 in the box. And it's just amazing that the guys, you count on that man next to you. Like I tell JC, he's just misunderstood. No matter what, I can count on JC to do his job. And if we got a game to run, I can count on that person next to me to do their job. And my first year when I got there, I was like, this is crazy. Like, I went against Andrew Thomas, Solomon McKinley. I would never forget my first fall camp practice. Solomon McKinley broke my nose, and it was just leaking. And I was like, no, I ain't going outside. I put a tampon in and cut it, and we went to work. So I would never forget. That was like my setting moment. I was like, oh yeah, this box at Georgia real. And Solomon McKinley, a big boy, I ain't gonna lie. And it just closing on counter every day, seeing Aziz do it. Aziz a close on counter from the Apex, and I seen him bent somebody's face mask once. It was just some of the stories about, and that's at practice. We practice hard at Georgia, and that's just one thing.
You mentioned this is.
So that was Nolan Smith, the linebacker from Georgia, obviously, talking about the idea of doing more with less. Now, I tweeted, Nolan Smith says Georgia is doing more with less.
Oh, you instigator, you.
I didn't do it on purpose.
Sure.
Carm.
I don't think anybody who knows you believes that, but. Your producer's like,
No, Kirby is my only ally on a regular basis because literally, Kirby, every person that sits down at this damn table feels the need to take a shot at me.
I don't even know you anymore.
Are you? This is a monster of your own making. Buck,
wow, I'm such a victim.
I don't understand. Let me live. But
love you.
I was tweeting. I was trying to tweet a quote. I heard we do more with less. I heard what he was saying. I thought people would listen to the clip. They did not listen to the clip.
Oh, come on. You know how Twitter works.
I understand. But in the heat of the moment, I was not thinking about the reaction that Twitter would have to a quote that some thought was taken out of context. But still, what he's saying about Georgia and that defense, the way that scouts are talking about that program, has that kind of overtaken the discussion around what Alabama has been at this thing for so many years?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how Georgia recovers from losing Todd Monken back to the league.
Yeah.
But also,
Was he with the Bucks when you were there?
He was. Monk's great.
Okay.
He's full of stories.
So wait, let me pivot there quickly because the Titans fans are bent about their OC situation, and they wanted Todd Monken really bad.
Can you say that on air?
I think I've said worse things. maybe don't draw additional attention to it. But I would say that they are it's Thursday. You will hear that several times throughout the course of the radio show because several guests also are aware that it is Thursday. Titans fans are going through it with their OC situation. Todd Monken is somebody that they wanted. Mm-hmm. The idea that he came back to the league from Georgia, does that surprise you? Because I was kind of – the way that people talk about him, I don't know him personally. The way that people talk about him, I thought that was going to be his gig at his age.
Yeah, but you have to also think about the recruiting aspect of all of this and how, like, if you have the chance to go back to the league in a program you believe in a place that's going to give you autonomy, you have to do it because now he is. I mean, please don't let him hear this, but he's getting older.
Yeah.
And but you don't want to be on the road in the off season. Now you get to sit back, go on a couple vacations, especially in the summer. And I mean, Baltimore is such a good organization too. I know Titans fans don't want to hear that necessarily, but Monk's a riot, man. The stories that I got to hear from him while I was at the Bucks with him, he was the one. He's the king of. Somebody taught him this in his media training: the asking yourself a rhetorical question that you want to answer, essentially, instead of answering the question that was asked to you. He would say, "Is that something that we would do?" Well, you know what? I'll tell you that what we won't do. And he was notorious for it. So you'll hear that a little bit more. But no, I mean, it's one thing to be able to kind of develop these guys, given all the resources that he had at Georgia, all that kind of stuff. But you can't argue with the fact that you don't have to recruit now.
No, I know. The NL, it honestly, it's crazy to talk to some of these coaches about it, that it's an easier gig to come to the pros with everything that NIL has done and how much more warped the recruiting cycle has gotten.
And it was warped to begin with.
Well, I don't know if this conversation has been warped, perhaps our brains, but Carmen Vitale of Fox Sports, it's always a pleasure. At Carmi V is where you follow her, and her coverage at foxsports.com of all things NFC North, which is going to continue to be the discussion of the offseason with the Bears having that number 1 overall pick. Thank you, Carm.
Thanks, Buck.
All right, we're going to talk about what Vandy did to Kentucky last night. The rare college basketball segment from the Combine, but a massive deal, and you love when Kentucky takes that L. We'll talk about that coming up next here on 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back here on 104.5 The Zone. Hope everybody is enjoying themselves this morning. Hope you're off to a great start today. Thanks for hanging out with us here in Indy, where our combine coverage is coming to you live, courtesy of Scoreboard Bar and Grill, Dickens Turf and Landscape, and so many more who have made our coverage this week possible. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Lucas is over there at the media podiums getting some information, talking to a lot of the corners. You can make sure that you can that you're following Lucas, because I know he's tweeting a lot of the videos. He's been doing some scrums with me throughout the course of the week. It's pretty funny to watch him like up here at Indy throughout the course of this, Robert, because he was excited. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but he was excited to come, and then he walks away from the first round of coaching or coaches discussions, and he's like, I don't know how you do this every day. Like the shine wore off so quickly for him, and I feel like he's been rubbing your nose in it all week because he's been so passive-aggressive about being here.
No, it's not that, because I understand what he's saying, that he hates these media scrums, because most of the media members there should be like media professionals, and we're all in the audio business, right? Like, we're all in the business of getting good clips that can be used and repurposed on air or in podcasts. And the one thing that bothers me about these media scrums, let the guy that you're asking the questions finish their question before you butt in and ask another question. Like, you ruin the whole end of a clip. And I get you want to get your question out and you want to be the first one, but that rubs me the wrong way. When, look, I finally got to ask this guy the question that I needed for a story or for my show, and then Johnny journalist next to me has to be like, hey, coach, shut up, and just let people ask their questions. That bothers me as well.
You know what else I think bothers Robert Walsh? What is your general manager doing?
You know what?
Wait. Slow down. Take a beat. 10 deep breaths or 20 short ones. Whatever gets you to pace yourself just slightly better before you completely run over this segment and not let me explain to the audience what I'm talking about. Robert is a Ravens fan. You all can hate him for it. At Robbie_Walsh is where you follow him if you want to tweet him hateful things. As Kirby scrambles for his phone right away. Eric DeCosta, the general manager of the Ravens, has been asked about their wide receiver situation in Baltimore. Obviously, the Lamar Jackson situation is ongoing. They have Rashad Bateman, a high-round draft pick from a couple of years ago, on the roster, and he has been dealing with injuries the past 2 seasons. And DeCosta has been asked about the lack of receiving talent that currently exists on the roster. Now, Robert, you can express your frustrations.
The quote from DeCosta, he was asked about the trouble drafting receivers. He said, if I had an answer for that, it probably would mean we would have better receivers. We're going to keep swinging. Now, I don't think that's a slight to Bateman. I think that's a slight to the depth and the fact that every year the draft rolls around, what's the number 1 need, number 2 need, number 3 need for the Baltimore Ravens? It's a wide receiver. They always need receivers. I don't think it's a slight to Bateman. So he said that struck a nerve with Bateman, and rather than going to the general manager and talking about this or being upset about it quietly, he decided to voice his disgruntledness on Twitter, and he said, how about you play to your players' strengths and stop pointing the finger at us and 8. ... Blame the one you let do this. We take heat 24/7 and keep us healthy. Care about us and see what happens. Ain't no promises, though. I'm tired of y'all lying and capping on players for no reason. Again, I don't think he was slighting you. I think he was slighting the fact that we need receivers every single year. And honestly, as a Ravens fan, I'm over all of this childish Twitter complaining, and this is not to say Lamar, because Lamar, for what he does, is passive aggressive. Most people take the likes and the Instagram stories as him whining, but with Bateman, this is not the first time he's complained about something. He usually does this. He'll tweet, he deletes, and honestly, the Ravens need to get their stuff together. They do. A lot of players have been coming out saying the strength and conditioning program messed them up as from an injury standpoint. Well, you know what? The things that you're complaining about, one, they let go of Steve Saunders, their strength and conditioning coach, in the offseason. He's complaining about the offense. They let Greg Roman walk. They brought in Todd Monken. So all the things that you are complaining about, they are actively trying to remedy. So I don't see the benefit of going on social media and clamoring about this unless you're trying to drum up trade talk and get the hell out of Baltimore. And to that I say, if you don't like it here, go find somewhere else to play.
No, I mean this is kind of the domino effect that social media has on what it is to be a personnel executive in the NFL right now. Like Lamar Jackson has caused a bit of a tailspin with how the Ravens perceive their management because they all love Lamar, and a lot of these guys are looking around being like, why the hell don't you have the quarterback's deal done yet? It's not just about agitating and irritating him when you are not negotiating through an agent as a buffer type situation. But now it's spread the further that this thing kind of festers and the longer that they let it go. And if he doesn't like getting tagged, it's something that's just going to continue to happen. It's the thing that the Titans ran the risk with AJ messaging certain things on social media last year, and the need for other players to kind of respond to these things or interact with players on the roster who are actively voicing contract concerns or issues that they take with how things are being read. It's the difficulty of navigating social media just generally. But the fact that it's having that kind of ripple effect for Baltimore right now, that cannot make anybody feel good.
And I think it's a weird situation to be in because you just had Carmen on, and she said, "Oh, we know the Baltimore Ravens are a great ran organization." So is it a perception issue where everyone on the outside thinks that Baltimore is a great organization, and everyone on the inside doesn't really agree with that? It's a question that I think needs to be answered, but I think Baltimore is taking steps in the correct direction, but only time will tell.
Look at that serious Ravens analysis from Robert. Our AFC North, the outsider.
I come over and you're so stoic. You and Kirby both are just deep in thought and listening. And I say, "Oh, what's going on here? What kind of audio are we playing?" And Bert's just going full on analysis mode.
Listen, we all have our hidden strengths. It's just Robert likes to hide them in bathroom humor. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. Lucas has been over talking to defensive backs, specifically corners. What have you brought us back?
I talked with Joey Porter for a little bit. Says it's very important for him to be taken as the first corner in this draft. Probably not somebody that Titans fans will want to take a lot of time familiarizing themselves with. Looks like he could be CB1 coming up here in a couple of months.
That's an interesting discussion, though, between Christian Gonzalez at Oregon and then Keely Ringo, as you mentioned.
And how they test is going to go a long way in that because Gonzalez is expected to test just off the charts. So we'll see how that kind of rockets in past Porter if it does. I tried to stick around and wait for Ringo, who's going to come after Porter. He was pretty delayed, so I went over and caught Darius Smith. Keely Ringo from Georgia. Darius Smith, the South Carolina corner who has met with the Titans and comes off as a guy that you would think Mike Vrabel and Ran Carthon would love. Talked about getting his start in special teams when they asked about the biggest piece of his game that has sort of developed since he started playing corner, which was only 3 years ago, kind of like Caleb Farley. I think 2019, was that the first year Caleb Farley played corner? That's first year Darius Smith started playing corner. But he said special teams because that's where he got his start, and that's where he feels like he's honed his just developmental skills as a football player as a whole on special teams. And he talked about meeting Vrabel and Ran Carthon and being really impressed by them and enjoying that conversation. But talked about his football IQ, just a really genuine guy that I think would impress the Titans brass. And I asked him the best receiver he went up against last year, the most challenging, and he said Evan Stewart, the true freshman at Texas A&M, was his number one, and he answered that pretty quickly. So I thought that was interesting.
Did you mutter under your breath? Not another one, Jimbo. Damn it.
Stewart, I believe, is not in the portal. I believe Evan Stewart is still a Texas A&M Aggie. But I just thought that was interesting that he went straight to a true freshman.
Look at you! I've got Robert giving me football analysis, and I've got you being a big J Journo.
Yeah, look at that.
My guys are growing up. Jimmy Wyatt is going to join us coming up next. Of course, out here grinding for TennesseeTitans.com. He's had great coverage all week long, and he will give us his insights and analysis here from Indianapolis. Coming up next.
What's going on from the Superbook.com sports desk? I'm Robert Walsh. Nashville SC has announced Milwaukee Bucks superstar Giannis Antetokounmpo and Nashville Predators forward Philip Forsberg are part of the new set of minority investors that have acquired a stake in the franchise. It is also included in the group that Giannis's brothers will be a part of the stake owners. The terms of the investment were not disclosed. Vanderbilt upset number 23 Kentucky 68-66 in Lexington last night. It is Vandy's first win in Rupp Arena since January of 2007. Tennessee's Zakai Ziegler suffered a torn ACL in his left knee during Tuesday's game against Arkansas and will miss the remainder of the season. In the NBA, the Grizzlies beat Houston 113-99. Desmond Bain scored 30 points. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
All right, here we go. Hour number 2 live at the NFL Combine. Thanks for hanging out with us here in Indianapolis. We got Kirby Allen Kirby. We got Lucas Panzica. Morale has been low, but we thought we'd bring it up a notch.
What is this morale is low thing? Like, this is the Combine, so it's just about perpetuating false narratives. But, like, speak for yourself. I was here. I was on time, laptop open. Neither of you guys were here. You came rolling in, and then you're, like, giving your phone to Kirby. Kirby, film me, and how miserable I am. And then, oh, stop filming me, Kirby. So enough with the morale is low. Morale is perfectly fine, especially for Jim Wyatt after last night.
You see what they do to me, Jimmy? Like, you got a little taste of it. You sit down, and they just start yelling things at you.
Yeah, well, I will say I did see Lucas bright and early this morning. I was here for the kickers. I made a mistake of getting here 30 minutes early for the kickers.
30 minutes early
They were here at 8:30. I thought they started at 8. I'd have slept in 30 minutes. I'd have known they were known they were at 8:30. So talked to kickers for the first time at the Combine in a long time.
Well, I mean, before we talk about your insights and what you've gleaned from the kicker conversation, can we talk about the win your Commodores got last night?
It's
Jimmy,
a great win.
68-66 over Kentucky, a ranked Kentucky team at home last night, 17-13 now Vanderbilt. And Jimmy, I love when Kentucky loses. I love when Kentucky loses under any circumstances, but I swear to God, earlier this week I said nothing would make me happier in sports than if Vanderbilt went into Rupp Arena and took down the Wildcats. They did exactly that. It was a fantastic game.
It was, and and even Kentucky fans were complaining because they thought that Wright walked at the end after shooting 36 free throws to 13 for Vandy. Kentucky gets every call in the book in Rupp Arena, and then they want to complain about the last play. So yeah, that makes you want to beat Kentucky even more. And it's the biggest win in the Jerry Stackhouse era. There's no question about it. You know, I went back and forth on Twitter a little bit with Joe Rexrode last night. He said it was number 2 to Tennessee.
Now, wait, you didn't go back and forth with him. You murdered him. Yeah. You murdered him online, Jim.
Well, I think he just gave up with his last response. But Joe Rexrode knows basketball better than I do. But if you're going to start comparing Vanderbilt wins, you've got to be here longer than 6-7 years, and I can date by. You've got to look at the big picture and not just. What I think Kirby just said it. You got to look at the forest and look at the past. And Vanderbilt was 2-42 in Rupp Arena against Kentucky. Had not won a game there since 2007. Yes, the win against Tennessee was a big win, but Vanderbilt's beaten Tennessee 8 times since 2007 at home.
And
yes,
number 1 ranked Tennessee, big wins over Tennessee.
Yes, but they've beaten Tennessee. Joe has not been around here to experience some of that. He remembers the last 13 games, and then he's basing it off of that. But if you want to have an argument on who's a better team, Kentucky or Tennessee, that's even an interesting argument since Kentucky swept them. He wanted to bring up whether Tennessee was, the fact that Tennessee lost 4 of the last 5 was because of injuries. You're changing the conversation there, but they're, to win in Lexington against a team you've gone 2-42 against, winning for the first time 2007 and doing it without Liam Robbins, your big man. It's the biggest win in Jerry Stackhouse's era, and there's not even a question about it. I've talked to a lot of my friends and Vanderbilt followers. I don't know if anybody who disagrees with that, and I think Joe even lobbed it out there, and I don't think he's got anybody to be an ally with him. So.
Just kill him. Just keep killing him.
That was surgical.
It was. That's why Jimmy is the best of us, because I'll just if I don't like something that Rex Road writes or says on Twitter, I'll just call him an idiot and I'll move on with my day. Jimmy just surgically attacked every argument that he made, and did it so calmly that it's. I mean,
and he knows basketball. I mean, Joe Rex knows basketball.
He absolutely does.
Certainly, not going to even get into a conversation with him about X and O's in the game. But if he wants to take me up on Vanderbilt basketball history.
Biggest Vandy win since when?
That's good because Vanderbilt's won a lot of big games against number one ranked teams and won the SEC tournament against Kentucky, I guess 2012. So it's been a while. I have to look at that one.
Yeah.
But
maybe the 08 win against when Tennessee became number one and then immediately lost to Memorial Gym.
Yeah, well, they beat Kentucky to win the SEC tournament. I think that was 2012 maybe. I put that one up there.
Yeah, that'd qualify.
Jimmy Wyatt is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. At Jay Wyatt Sports is where you follow him. Of course, you can read all the great work that he's doing from the Combine. And all year round, the man sleeps less than Kirby Allen Kirby at TennesseeTitans.com. Jimmy, we talked to Tim Kelly for the first time. And your article about it and the discussions around it, I think it's got a lot of Titans fans talking, obviously, because of the idea. When asked about predictability of the offense, he didn't necessarily agree with that assessment from us based on our questions. What did you feel like Tim Kelly? What did you feel like you learned from Tim Kelly? I guess let's start.
Well,
there.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I mean, I thought what he hammered away, and what I think I took from it is just how they were going to try to do so many things to make it look, I guess, exotic or give the illusion that they're doing different things, whether it's with formations or personnel, when they're going to try to keep it simple for the players, where it will be an offense where guys won't have to think, they can just play. And, time will tell what it looks like. I asked him, what it's going to look like. How much different is it going to look? What kind of changes is he going to make for next year? And he said, I don't know. I don't know exactly who's going to be playing for us. This is the team, even though I think a lot of people took what Rand said as a definitive Ryan Tannehill's back. Right now, if I had to guess or if I had to make a prediction on it, I'd say yes, but that could change.
Yeah.
And this team needs help at receiver. This team needs help on the offensive line. This team's going to draft another tight end. So it's going to look different, and I think what he's able to do in large part is going to depend on the personnel he has to work with. It's a move that's either going to really pay off for Mike Vrabel, or it's going to be one that people question. He made this move with Arthur Smith several years back, and Arthur went on to be a head coach and made this move with Todd Downing. Didn't work out so well. So, but I like everything I've heard about Tim Kelly. I think a fresh set of ideas is going to help, but need to get better players. Better get faster.
Yeah, and that's the theme that Mike keeps coming back to in almost every conversation that we've had with him since the Titans season ended. I think that the thing that I'm interested to learn most about Rand is, I guess, how he kind of views it. Because I asked him about the idea of tanking, Jimmy, the other day. We get it. I'm sure you get it in your mailbag. We get questions like that on all the time on social media about the idea of, okay, well, what if they just tank, do like the 2019 Dolphins, try to get the best possible quarterback and have their situation set moving forward, because now you're dealing with Trevor Lawrence, potentially Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, or one of these other top quarterback picks who are all going to be in this division, because the Colts are picking in the top 5, as are the Texans, obviously. And Rand Carthon was basically said, how would you think Mike Vrabel would respond to the idea of me wanting to tank a season, even if that was in my DNA?
Yeah, and how do you think Kevin Byard's going to respond to that, or Jeffrey Simmons, who they're trying to get back long term? How do you think he's going to respond to that? I mean, that tanking is just not. I mean, I get questioned all the time about blowing it all up.
Yeah.
And what is that? I don't even know what that means. I mean, because
I don't think teams do that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, guys are playing to earn spots for the future, even at the end of the season. You saw what the Texans did in Week 18. They go out and win and lose their first pick because of that. That's because players play, and they play hard, and they play to win. And, I don't care how many changes you make or how big of name guys are that you let go. These guys are professional players. They're still going to be capable of winning games. And the fact that you released, I think some people read into some of the moves, the Taylor Lewan being released, and Zach Cunningham and Robert Woods and Randy Bullock, that's not a sign of blowing it up. That's a sign of making smart decisions on players who are not worthy of those contracts anymore. So how they piece it together, what it's going to look like, we'll start to get some clues here in the next couple of weeks in free agency, and then the draft is really going to start putting a bow on things.
It does seem to be, though, and the more that we listen to Rand talk, and I've had him on the show now twice. He's done a couple of availabilities with us generally, and I don't know how much time, Jimmy, you've spent with him at places like Senior Bowl and things like that. But it does seem almost to be that he is here. He is, I don't want to say taking a back seat is the wrong phrase to use, but he does seem to be set on the idea of there's a certain process in place. I am here to kind of learn that process first and see where I can add as need be. But that seems to be the flow of how things are running right now as we work through this first draft process under Rand Carthon.
Yeah, and I think that's the right way to do it. And I don't want to say he's not going to be learning on the job because he's been in an executive role and he's been in personnel before, but this is new for him. And I do think he's deferring to people who have been there before, whether that's the scouts, whether that's Ryan Cowden, whether that's Mike Vrabel. He is not going to come in and all of a sudden make a lot of drastic changes. He wants to see his people work. These guys have been working on this draft. The scouts have been working on it since last year's draft. So, and certainly Rand has too. But I think what he'll do is he'll observe. He'll get their opinion. We'll see how this draft process and free agency goes, and then after the draft, that's when maybe he would consider maybe making some adjustments on how things are run. But I like hearing him and how he plans to build this team, with his vision, but also Mike Vrabel's vision on how he wants the team to be. And I think that's the way you do it. And you can say what you want to about John Robinson. He had certainly made some good picks, made some good moves. I do think it got to the point, though, where when John was in charge, it was going to be his call, and it wasn't his way or the highway type deal. But I think now I get the impression that there will be more opinions taken into consideration than maybe they were in the past.
I'd gotten a little bit of the sense of that myself. Just the idea, isolating is the wrong way to put it, but just kind of. It did get that way, it sounds like, towards the end.
Yeah, and he's the GM. He earned the right to be in the position to make
That's
that
the job.
pick.
You're the trigger man.
Yeah, because if it doesn't work, you're the one who's going to be blamed for it, and you're the one whose job is going to be at stake.
Right.
So, so there's a fine line there on how much you can criticize him for taking that approach. But I do think if you're all in it together and everybody's working on the draft and everybody's working on free agency and everybody's kind of pulling the rope, then you do have to take a lot of things into consideration.
Collaboration, kids. It's not just a slogan at this point. Maybe we'll see it on the outside of the practice fields or around the three fields at St. Thomas Sports Park on the fence where Mike Vrabel typically likes to hang his propaganda for the season. Jimmy Wyatt at J Wyatt Sports. Make sure you check out all the great work that he's doing at TennesseeTitans.com. The mailbag questions, you know where to find him. Got a really good story on Vandy linebacker Anthony Orji that you need to see, as well as what he heard from Will Anderson, and obviously takeaways from Rand Carthon, Mike Vrabel, Tim Kelly, and everything else that's happening up here in Indy. Buddy, I appreciate you stopping by. I know you're busy.
Thank you, Buck. Appreciate it.
Jimmy Wyatt there with us on 104.5 The Zone. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Let's talk about the most encouraging thing that Tim Kelly said to Titans media coming up next. Uncle Bud's, 2719 Old Lebanon Road at the Donaldson Plaza is where you go for the best meal you've had in quite some time, unless you've recently been to Uncle Bud's, and then you know exactly what I'm talking about. All-you-can-eat fixins, all-you-can-eat catfish on Thursday nights, and Sunday, all-you-can-eat chicken. Kirby, that sounds real good right now. All their meals come with their famous all-you-can-eat fixins. It is a meal unlike any other, and it's a great value as well. You can join the Uncle Bud's loyalty program to get discounts, coupons, and so much more. Just go to unclebuds.com to join. You can even earn double rewards for my preferred way to consume this fantastic food. Curbside pickup. Get it to go. Uncle Bud's has the perfect combo pack for your family with meals that will serve from 6 to 8 people and come with everything from those fantastic hush puppies that they have to the plates and napkins that you need to get it all done hassle-free. Just keep it easy. Go to unclebuds.com and schedule curbside pickup today. Welcome back to the Indianapolis NFL Scouting Combine, the Indiana Convention Center. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Coverage presented by who, Lucas?
Presented by Scoreboard Bar and Grill, John Roberts Nissan, and Dickens Turf and Landscape Supply. You tried to get me there.
I did.
He's tried to get me with a mouthful of sandwich.
You betrayed me earlier with the morale bit that we were trying to carry on. So
Yeah, I just like this performance art from you. Morale is low. You're fine. Kirby's as chipper as ever, and I was here at 8 a.m.
What is this show if not performance art? Some might say. But speaking of performance, that's not something that the Tennessee Titans offense did terribly well last season. And, of course, changes were made to that effect. Players will be added to the roster, both through the draft process and free agency, and there's a lot of new faces associated with both of those things. But new OC Tim Kelly was one of the people who was made available to the media on the first day that we were up here on Tuesday. And he was asked a couple of questions, obviously about, the status of last year's unit. He chose not to necessarily be reflective, but to continue to talk about everybody doing the best possible job that they can, and the fault is not on one individual, and the injuries are something that's cited. But he was asked about his sense of flow of a game, which is something that Mike Vrabel brought up as a part of the interview process when they finally announced that Tim Kelly was the choice that they made at offensive coordinator. So I want you to hear from Tim on that subject from Tuesday's availability.
Yeah, I think the flow of the game is important. I learned early on when I was calling plays that you can go in with the best game plan and with hey, we're going to run the ball 30 times today, and then you get into halftime and you're like, we shouldn't run the ball 30 times today. So there's the flow of the game is huge, and you got to be able to figure it out quick. Because if you wait until halftime or if you wait until the third quarter to make an adjustment, a lot of times that ends up being too late. So being able to adjust to what we see, hopefully the game plan that we've put together is working. And there's not just a complete overhaul, but in break glass in case of emergency. Sometimes you have to make a 180. And I know Mike referenced the Houston game that we had in 21. Where that was not the plan, but whatever we had in the first half wasn't working, and we needed to change if we wanted to give ourselves a chance to win the game. So, making sure that I have a good feel for the flow of the game, and then being aggressive when it makes sense to be aggressive. I think there's a fine difference between being reckless and being aggressive.
A fine difference between being reckless and being aggressive. That's Tim Kelly from Tuesday's media availability. We'll talk about the least encouraging things that Tim Kelly had to say later on, but honestly, I think that was the most encouraging thing that I heard out of his press availability, because just to sustain drives for this team is such a nightmare, and it feels like it's been that for the last couple of seasons. It has. Total first downs, 277. For reference, their opponents got 339 against the defense. And looking at the way that they kind of sputtered out at times and some of the decisions that were made, it's hard to quantify flow of the game necessarily, but it's something that you can identify that the Titans did not have on a regular basis. Part of that's because of the personnel changing, but obviously the inconsistencies among just from game to game that they oftentimes showed, and just moments where I don't know how else to describe it, but a brain fart in some of the decisions that they would make. And obviously the coaching staff getting a sense of that as well and feeling the need, like, okay, this is something that we all understand is becoming a problem. We need to have somebody who has a better sense for this thing.
First of all, it's interesting when he talks about in reference to the Titans in 21, that Texans game.
Yeah.
Because he was calling plays for Houston in that game.
That's right. He was calling plays against the Titans.
And the Texans jumped out to a lead, and the Titans had to come back in the second half. So it's fascinating to hear him talking about how we had to adjust things in the second half when he was actually on the other side.
Which is something that was regularly brought up by Titans players when we asked him about Tim Kelly. It's like, oh yeah, that guy has dialed it up against us a couple of times.
No, he beat you with Tyrod Taylor, and he almost beat you with Davis Mills.
Yes.
In 2021. But when he says reckless and aggressive, like towing that line, were the Titans either of those things on offense last season?
No, I mean, I don't think that. Well, aggressive, I mean, I would have to have, like, how often they went for it on fourth down in front of me. I know. They went for it 17 fourth downs last year. They were 9 of 17 on fourth down specifically. It's not necessarily like the biggest number in the league, and it would have to be game specific or situation specific to go back and look at it to kind of determine, all right, was this in fact a proactive move, an aggressive move by Mike Vrabel and the coaching staff to go for it in this spot? I can't necessarily say that I have felt that they were reckless or like overtly aggressive last year.
And this isn't everything, but just for the sake of the conversation, they went for it on fourth down. They were a bottom 7 team in the amount of times they went for it on fourth down.
Okay. But again, it's almost like
it's a lot more nuanced than just how many times
it's like interceptions, right? Like I want to have the specific situation in which they were being presented with a fourth down before I make any assessment on the number of fourth downs that they did or did not go for it on. You know what I'm saying?
But I think most Titans fans would look at that question and say they were neither of those things, reckless nor aggressive. I don't know that there was a lot of aggressive nature about the Titans' play calling last season.
No,
talking about the frustration on first and second down runs.
Well, and the early down thing is what it comes back to, because it felt to a certain extent that they were doing the thing that's most comfortable, which is just hand the ball to the 250-pound running back and then hope that he breaks the big one. Right? That's the Tony Dews line all year. It's like, oh, eventually we're going to get it right. Eventually he's going to break one. We know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And then Derek had a couple of plays and the fumbles really damned them. Which is a new situation that threw a whole different set of problems into play for that offense. But you cannot just rely on the thing that's most comfortable, and oftentimes that felt to be the default. Now, if they don't hand the ball to Derrick Henry often, they're going to get hammered for it. Like that's the kind of devil's advocate argument that they would present you with, and they're right. Because Titans fans love Derrick Henry. They want to see him get the ball. They also think that he's going to break the big one at any given point. So it's not going to be an unpopular opinion if you come out and say, like Mike Vrabel often does, guys, he's special. I promise. Derrick Henry is special. If we keep handing him the ball, it's probably going to work more often than not. At a certain point, that magic starts to wear off, and we've obviously seen that.
Well, if the offense isn't having success, they're going to get hammered for whatever they're doing.
It doesn't matter.
If they're not handing it off to Derrick Henry and they're not scoring points, or they're handing it off to Derrick Henry 30 times a game and not scoring points, they're going to get hammered for not doing the thing that they are not doing, just because they're not finding success.
Well, what they're not doing is scoring.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
What they're not doing is scoring, and largely that is the issue for them. Now,
but that is probably the most encouraging thing from Titans fans. Flow of the game. It's so much made of adjustments and in-game play calling from Todd Downing. But I think that appeases people when they hear him talk about both that and versatility, which he talked about a lot. Was that, what, yesterday? They all run together at this point.
Yeah.
Tuesday.
I think there's a couple of different things, right? When you look at the amount of uncertainty that still surrounds this offense, it's tough to ask him specific questions about. I mean, it's not tough to ask him specific questions about last year, but he's not going to give you the answers that you want. He's going to defer to the thing that Mike Vrabel and so many other coaches do, which is we're focused on the year ahead of us. We're focused on the improvements that we're going to make, not about the things that caused us problems in the past, which is just easy way to cop out of it and be like, all right, I'll talk to you next meeting.
Ironic, because he referenced to the past in that clip 2 years ago when he wasn't even on the staff.
Roster acquisitions is going to be the biggest thing beyond that. I meant to ask Jimmy earlier. I meant to ask Jimmy this earlier about the idea of like this being the most scrutinized decision that Mike Vrabel has made so far, because we talked about
Tim
Kelly. I really, the more that I think about it, and we all know that there are options on the table as far as the roster with Ryan Tannehill specifically. You hear Rhett Bryan and other people with credibility talking about the idea that there is a world in which something can happen to Derrick Henry and he's not on the roster in 2023, whether that be a release just for the sake of money, whether that be a trade, which is entirely more likely to try and salvage some of the capital that was lost in the Julio Jones trade or the Robert Woods trade at this point.
So you're not just talking about coaching hires.
I'm talking about, of all the decisions that Mike Vrabel has ever made, is Tim Kelly going to be the one that we look at the most, given where we are in Mike's tenure and the discussion that's starting to form around them, which is that it's, the run the damn ball thing is cute until you start to get left in the dust and you're scoring 18 points a game.
That's the poll question. Is hiring Tim Kelly the most scrutinized Mike Vrabel decision by Titans fans in a way that's worded where it makes sense.
Are you telling me that, or are you going to actually put it on the poll?
You'd probably forget whenever I put out polls on the air, then I'll say I'll get to it at the break, and then it doesn't happen. But I do think the Downing hire would heavily compete with that.
After Art?
That was not viewed favorably. And I understand there was very much an element of, it's very much working in these last 2 years, so it's not inspiring. The body of work isn't necessarily the best resume, but let's see what happens. And then that's obviously not the conversation this offseason. But Tim Kelly's body of work as a play caller, just as far as production, was more impressive than Todd Downing's when he was elevated as the Titans OC.
Well, and that's the argument that they'll present to you, right? Because you'll get a lot of when you ask people around it about, okay, why does this make sense, and where does the creativity come from, and can he further a player like Malik Willis, for example, which is as big a question on the roster as the Titans have moving forward, not just next season but into the foreseeable future. And they'll give you the numbers for Davis Mills working with Tim Kelly versus not working with Tim Kelly this past season, and put that as an example of, well, look how good he did with Davis Mills and what Davis Mills became after.
Vandy Eli on YouTube says, Tim Kelly made me believe Davis Mills could be a solid quarterback in this league.
Well, and I mean, there's a couple of things that would make you believe that Davis Mills could be and Davis Mills still can be a solid quarterback in this league. I don't think that it's godforsaken just because Tim Kelly left. But the more that you look at the circumstances for the way that the Titans have gone about this thing, I think most people are trying to find the next good idea guy, the next creative schemer, the next whatever version of what carries the offense into the future in the NFL. And the Titans basically just ran back the 2014 Texans staff and said, all right, baby, let's do this thing.
And that could have something to do with Charles London on this staff. That could have something to do with the way the staff has shaken out without not just Tim Kelly, a passing game coordinator, a new quarterbacks coach, moving Pat O'Hara to an analyst role. Pass game analyst, right, is Pat O'Hara's official title, and Luke Steckel was the run game analyst. Now he's off to Chicago. But the staff shakeup, it was so much deeper than just Tim Kelly. So I feel like you got to bring those names into the mix when it comes to the new ideas that you're talking about, because that's not just coming from Tim Kelly.
615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. The most encouraging thing Tim Kelly said to Titans media is about the sense of the flow of the game, and kind of what he cited there with when he used to scheme against the Titans, and understanding that you were going to see them twice a year as a part of the Texans coaching staff. Their offensive coordinator situation is going to be discussed the least, I think, of all the different hires that were made.
That's already the case.
Just left in the dust. And not that discussion is any kind of indication of success, but there's not necessarily, I mean, for a great many reasons, there's not a ton of interest level in them. When you talk to people around the league, like, mostly it's devolved into a conversation about Ryan Tannehill. Like, the entire offseason has now just become a Ryan Tannehill black hole, where we're going to keep having the same conversations. Rand Carthon's going to keep getting asked the question every time he's out there. And by the way, he should, because that's as big a decision as they have to make this offseason. And I feel that everything else that they're trying to do kind of gets lumped under that giant umbrella of what the quarterback situation is. In the same way that, it became such a nightmare with the Mentorgate deal on a throwaway line by a quarterback who's probably never said an interesting thing publicly in his life. And the thing that was just interesting enough got completely ran away with. It's just another off-season of Tannehill, if you ask anybody outside of Nashville.
Until they show evidence of a fundamental move away from what they are on offense, which would mean Derrick Henry being shipped off, right, or a change at quarterback. Like, Rand Carthon's out there saying it's cute to play Golden State Warriors football in September, but you got to play defense. And so everybody's looking at it just same old Titans. That's why nobody's talking about it. What is there to talk about from an outside perspective? Well, Tim Kelly was on this staff last year. Right now, they are the same Titans fundamentally as far as offensive philosophy goes as they were in 2022. The ideas can be different, and the creativity and the flow of the game, but from an outside perspective, what is there when you look at the Titans to talk about when it comes to elevating Tim Kelly? I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it makes sense to me why this hire, with all the coordinator carousel action that happened in this offseason, is not really being carried into the conversation as one of the more notable ones.
The narrative around them. Oh, there it is.
Oh!
I hate you so much.
Oh, he in the amount of time and opportunity he had to run me over with it.
That's so disrespectful.
I love you, Robert.
This is why I can't get anything done around here.
I'm glad Lucas noticed the timing. The Jaguars are expected to place the franchise tag on tight end Evan Ingram. The tight end franchise tag is worth $11.3 million.
Okay, so that's a big retention for the Jags within the division. To have tagged Evan Ingram, as Robert just told you. Adam Schefter, the first on the report. So he against the Titans was an absolute matchup nightmare. Gave them all kinds of problems throughout the course of the season. And Doug Peterson probably knows that and said, you know what? I kind of like the job that guy did for me. Let's keep him around at least under team control in the immediate.
He, this past season, caught 73 passes for 766 yards and 4 touchdowns.
I'm going to look up his game log specifically against the Titans because that was the thing. I mean, of all the discussions around them and like those Jags-Titans games, and they really did not put up much of a fight.
Oh, over 200 at least of those 766 yards happened at Nissan Stadium.
Well, because like one of the first big breakout games for Evan Ingram, I felt like was that first Jags-Titans game.
Yeah, and that was one of Trevor Lawrence's best performances of the season.
Yeah, no, at this point, that's a smart move to keep. I mean, $11 million for a team that's kind of working through some cap stuff right now. Anyway, may sound counterintuitive, but I know they made a lot of moves earlier in the week to kind of relieve some caps, which probably allows them to make this move comfortably ahead of the tag deadline.
It was not 200 yards, but it was 11 catches for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns on 15 targets. It was by far his best performance of the season. He only went over 100 twice against the Titans and against the Jets on that awful Thursday night game where Zach Wilson got benched and that third Jets quarterback that we can never name.
No, Strevler. I know his last name, forever in our hearts.
But that was by far the best performance of Evan Ingram's season and one of the best of his career.
All right,
in Nissan Stadium.
So a little bit of news there in the AFC South. The Jags franchise tagging tight end Evan Ingram to keep him with Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson, and that staff. Speaking of an upgrade as far as the weaponry is concerned, the Titans certainly need wide receivers, tight ends, pass catchers just generally to try and get this thing off the mat. There's a couple of prospects from the University of Tennessee that are very, very interesting. So we're going to talk about which of the Vols wide receivers are going to test best up here at Indianapolis coming up next. The Music City Grand Prix, it's right around the corner. August is not that far away. August 4th through the 6th is when this fantastic weekend goes down in the city of Nashville. 3 days of racing, music, food, and more. It is guaranteed to be a blur, kind of like Kirby's night last night. News for 2023, Saturday night racing, the return of the high-flying stadium super trucks, tons and tons of racing, all capped off on Sunday with the NTT IndyCar Series race through the streets of Nashville. There's also incredible musical events, the Wesley Mortgage Freedom Friday All-Star Concert, honoring our military, the big Saturday night concert Under the Stars, and so much more. So make sure you're a part of one of the biggest parties of the year. Snag your tickets before they're gone at MusicCityGP.com. That's MusicCityGP.com. Welcome back to the Combine, hanging out here at the Indiana Convention Center. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Paying attention to a lot of the prospects that are going to be starting to participate in workouts today. Bud, you excited to go over to Lucas Oil?
Yes, last time I was in Lucas Oil, it was a subdued environment. I was not impressed.
So, of course, you're referencing the Titans-Colts
game last
game at Lucas
And
Oil.
in fairness, the Titans jumped out to a 24-0 lead. There was nothing for the Colts fans to cheer about, but just from the jump, that place did not have a lot of juice in that game.
You know, I think there's a couple of different fan bases like that. I feel like that's the kind of general sense when you go to Jerry World, like Cowboys fans. There's so many of them. You would think that it would be absolutely rocking when you walk in there, but it's not.
It's too nice a place.
It is definitely Jerry World or Lucas Oil.
Jerry World and Lucas Oil. It's part of what makes, like, for me, college football environments better. Is a lot of these stadiums that are so historic but old and decrepit in a lot of areas, and the energy in it is different from basically an office building, which I feel like is what Lucas Oil Stadium is. It's literally connected to a convention center. Like, it might as well be an office building.
I mean, people do call it a Kroger an awful lot. So, with all that being said, wide receivers we will not see until the weekend. But with the two Vols wide receivers who are in this draft and a lot of interest around them, Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman, two very different players at the position. I think that the unfortunate situation, the injury situation for Cedric Tillman last year, he only appeared in 6 games for the Vols. Still very effective when he got back into the lineup. He had 37 catches, 417 yards, 3 touchdowns. And you know he's going to be eager to kind of prove that he is still the kind of dynamic player that the league is looking for at the wide receiver position when he's up here at the Combine this week. So I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of what he has to offer. Because the offense is just a track meet. So with somebody like Jalen Hyatt's speed and with the accomplishments that he was able to have, he was literally the best college football wide receiver in the country. By it's the Biletnikoff Award that they give it out at the end of the year once they start to do the end of season awards in college football. But when you look at these two players, I don't necessarily think that you can pigeonhole them into certain subsects, but I just think there's so much more you can do with Cedric Tillman at the NFL level that we know right now. We don't know how much of Jalen Hyatt is as a product of Tennessee's offense, but he has to, of course, get credit for the amount of production that he was able to have in that system, the same way that Tillman in 21 against big-time defenses, Alabama and Georgia, was able to do a lot of the same stuff with just a different kind of approach.
Kevin on YouTube says, Buck has said the last 2 days in a row on the radio that Hyatt is not running the 40, but I can't find it reported anywhere else.
That's right.
If our very own Buckster scoops Rappaport or Schefter. No, I think it's just wrong. I think he is running the 40.
Yeah, no, that was something I had listened to on the Athletics NFL show, and they were not, I think, sure about the idea that Jalen Hyatt was going to run the 40. I think that was Sunday afternoon that I was listening to that for reference if you wanted to hear the clip.
But he has an opportunity because it's not, you can't test combat catches really at the NFL, at the Combine. So he has an opportunity to have the fastest 40 time at the Combine. Like, he is one of the candidates.
Jalen Hyatt is widely expected to be that kind of player this year.
So would that help him more than it would help Cedric Tillman to show that speed element to his game when you already know he can be a combat catcher, big physical receiver that has good tape against some of the best defenses in the country, especially in 2021?
I'm trying to think back to a conversation that we had last night with somebody that was around one of the wide receivers. Like he was, I can't remember the function that this individual played. And I can't remember the wide receiver that they were talking about, that they were adamant they were going to break the 40 record this weekend at Indy. And, I mean, Jalen Hyatt is the only one that I could logically make the case for. But I don't remember it specifically being Jalen Hyatt. Either way.
It wasn't. I would have remembered if it was Jalen Hyatt.
Right. Well,
I know what you're talking about.
You're right. You were over there for a little bit of that. This is the problem with doing the advanced research.
You should have had your notepad out.
I know. That's the fastest way to get tossed out of one of those bars.
2 a.m. at bar.
Scribbling vigorously.
Yeah, sorry. Say that one more time.
Can you speak a little closer to the microphone, please? But, yeah, I think, given all the different things, like physically, I think that Cedric Tillman is overall going to test better. But I think the bigger, like the more eye-catching number, if Jalen Hyatt runs the 40, which it sounds like at this point he's expected to, I think that will be the thing that kind of catches more people attention. I think overall, though, Tillman he just seems like he would test better at this point with all the different things that he's going to be asked to do through the NFL scouting process here at the Combine.
But could Tillman raise his stock more? Because that's the biggest.
Yeah.
And stock is a very subjective thing. Like, stock can just be how media talks about it, because the 40 time, safe to say that is of all the workouts they do at Lucas Oil Stadium, that is the thing that gets highlighted. That's the biggest buzz measurement time test, whatever.
Yeah,
like
if
the sexiest thing.
If Cedric Tillman has a crazy number on the shuttle run, for example, which is a big one for the wide receivers,
nobody will care.
Well, no, I think that's that one that matters.
I'm talking about people on the outside. Like, what's going to create the buzz? Like, what are we going to be talking about? Like, people aren't going to be talking about, did you hear about Cedric Tillman's shuttle time?
If Jalen Hyatt runs really, really fast, then it's going to get a lot more attention.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's the sexiest thing. So Jalen Hyatt's name will be flashed out there probably more than Cedric Tillman's will, as far as the social media stuff and the buzz and the 40 time and, oh my God, he ran a 4.27 or whatever it would be. But, like, Tillman probably stands to raise his stock a little bit more, right? Because there are questions about Hyatt that just can't be answered this
now,
week.
I think Tillman with the vert will, depending on how that goes, the vertical jump, I think that he can garner a lot of attention because, you're looking at him first and foremost as a big play wide receiver that can make the contested catches, basically bleep it, Cedric's down there somewhere, right, with a different variation of that. They're both, the wide receivers, I believe, are on the field at Lucas Oil Saturday.
It's after we leave. We're not going to get to see them. We are going to get to talk to them tomorrow. So tomorrow morning is going to be slammed on the other side of that curtain.
Quarterbacks, wide receivers. It's going to be, it's going to be the big money media. Time.
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt will speak at 11:10 Eastern, so 10 minutes into the show. But we'll have to go and get some of that.
615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the most concerning thing that Tim Kelly had to say to Titans media, and based on what we've heard from Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon in several different instances, who the hell has final say on this roster? I think that picture is starting to become more clear. We'll explain what we mean by that coming up next.
What's going on from the Superbook.com sports desk? I'm Robert Walsh. Nashville SC has announced Milwaukee Bucks superstar Giannis Antetokounmpo and Nashville Predators forward Philip Forsberg are now part of the new set of minority investors that have acquired a stake in the franchise. The terms of the investment were not disclosed. Vanderbilt, they upset number 23 Kentucky 68-66 in Lexington. It has been Vandy's first win in Rupp Arena since January of 2007. Jordan Wright hit the game-winning shot with under 3 seconds remaining. He finished with 23 points. Tennessee's Zakai Ziegler, he suffered a torn ACL in his left knee during Tuesday's game against Arkansas and will miss the remainder of the season. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour for us here today in Indianapolis. Hope everybody's enjoying the show so far. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you're just now hopping on, driving around in your car for your lunch break, lovely to have you here. Join the conversation at any point if you would like to. 615-737-1045. That's the number. Kirby is here. Lucas is here. Morale is high.
It is high.
It's been a fast show. It's weird. I felt like yesterday was so long because we had 5 guests. I was as tired as I've been after a show just because, I don't know, there's a lot of moving parts. This has been a fast show. I feel like it's because it's just more normal. I feel like things are a little evened out at this point.
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
I have nothing to add.
Excellent.
Let's derail that whole plan.
Swell.
Oh, man. We're getting our steps in, too. I mean, we're hydrated. Morale is very high. I love how much they make you work for these sandwiches. It's like this convention center.
It's the hardest you've had to work for free food in quite some time.
Not only do you go upstairs, but you have to traverse multiple hallways and end up probably, I don't know, how many steps do you think it is to get up and down from the media work food area?
I'm sure that people don't care about the amount of steps that you have to walk to get your free sandwich and cookie.
But I just love the concept of come get it, fatty.
It's really the only kind of insults that you can still do is fat shaming the hordes of overweight sports media people.
You want a sandwich? You want a turkey sandwich?
Who are accustomed to a closer
yeah.
You
got to be quicker than that.
What is the insurance commercial that has the dollar bill at the end of the
State Farm?
It back?
Is that State Farm? Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing with these sandwiches.
No, media people are used to a little closer feeding trough than the combine. Got to hoof it a little bit to get your sandwich in. Speaking of things that require heavy lifting, the Titans' offense, a tough scene. Tim Kelly is tasked with maybe not outright fixing it at this point, but at least trying to get it in a better spot than the redundancy that we felt like we were watching for the past 2 seasons. The Titans had the 8th highest run pass rate in 2022 per Pro Football Focus. Run. So, the thing that drives you the craziest.
First and second down.
First down, Derrick Henry. Second down. First and 10, Derrick Henry. Second and 11, Derrick Henry. And then you throw it on third down. Dennis Daly gives up a sack, and Ryan Tannehill goes down in a pile of himself with a snapped ankle. That's basically the experience that we all went through for 17 weeks of the NFL season until such time as the ankle was no longer functional and you had to watch Malik Willis and Josh Dobbs run for their lives out there. Now, there's only so much that Tim Kelly can do with the atrocity that was the 2022 Titans, and one would imagine that the 2023 version will look a lot different. But when you're interviewing this person for the first time, and we haven't gotten to talk to Tim Kelly hardly at all. They didn't have to make him available last year, even as there was a coordinator portion of his title, and coordinators are typically made available once a week. I want you to hear from Tim Kelly on how he felt about the predictability of last year's offense, and then I'm going to tell you why it's the most concerning thing I heard this week.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I didn't think we were predictable last year. I think there are some times where, certain games, certain things, weather, people you have available, things along those lines. There are a lot of elements that go into predictability or perceived predictability. So I wouldn't say that we were predictable last year.
Mike seemed to think you were predictable. Mike, in hiring you, one of the things he said he wanted was to be able to go into the same formations out of different personnel, to be less predictable, not signal
Sure.
coming in personnel.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we want to do as an offense is we want to be versatile. So whether it ends up being multiple personnel groupings, multiple formations, playing in multiple tempos, just doing things to try to keep people off balance. So that's what we're going to look to do moving forward. We want to put our guys in the best position possible.
You ran an awful lot on first down as well. You think there was some predictability there?
I didn't, but again, like I said, there are a lot of things that go into calling a game. And so, last year was last year, but moving forward, I can tell you what we're going to do and what we're going to try to do and how we're going to build this offense.
So that was an exchange, some important follow-ups there being asked by PK about the predictability of the offense, about the amount of times that they run on first down in particular. They're going to be run heavy no matter what the circumstances, as long as Derek's on that roster, which, by the way, is no 1,000% guaranteed thing moving forward into 2023. So who's to say what parts and pieces Tim Kelly will be working with? But the answer cannot be, under any circumstances, when you fire that offensive coordinator the way that you did, for the reasons that you did, beyond the off-field, that you didn't think they were predictable last year. Buddy, in what mother bleeping world? You watched the same thing that we all watched. You know the numbers. You know the amount of times you run on first down. You know that you are basically running the same version of an offense that you did in 2019 when you could actually run on people that way. It has to make Titans fans pull their hair out and want to bang their heads against a table and say, what do you mean the guy we just hired didn't think we were predictable last year?
It sounds a little bit, too, like he's just sticking up for the staff and the offense that he was a part of, like regardless of what the question is.
I get it.
But it's just not the right thing to say.
It's you gotta read the room. Like, you got to read the room. And, that's not always easy for coaches. I think in certain circumstances, I think Nate Oates a great example of that in recent media availabilities, the Alabama basketball coach.
He was fired up last night, by the way. We talked about the Vandy game. We did not talk about Alabama winning the SEC.
Not now.
Last night.
Get out of here.
So Auburn down 17.
No,
I'm just kidding. We could do that later. Great game, though.
It was a fun game. But here's the thing. You have to – I understand that you're trying to acquit. You probably have a good relationship with Todd Downing no matter what he ends up – I mean, he's with the Jets at this point, obviously, as a part of their offensive coaching staff, which has Jets fans asking a lot of different questions as well. But I understand the need to kind of support the people that you work with. You never know when you're going to come into contact with people again in this industry, and you're probably trying to acquit yourself a little bit because he was very much a part of that staff, and then you're going to turn around and say, oh, the passing game coordinator that you just hired for one of the worst passing games in the NFL last year, that's the guy that we're going to trust to completely, get this thing right and basically turn this freighter back around in ways that make it feel functional again, because it's clearly been in a state of decay. But I don't know if that's a PR thing where somebody has to tell him before he goes out there in front of us, hey, they're going to ask you about how predictable the offense was. There's a certain way that you can answer this question without completely taking out everybody around you or the person who had your job last. There has to be, and I don't know the process for that. I'm not privy to a conversation like that. I just think that the worst possible thing that you can say in that moment is, I didn't think we were predictable.
Yeah, and he talked about wanting to be versatile, wanting to be more versatile and keep defenses off balance and all those things, which they just didn't really do last year. So it's kind of conflicting, saying that they were not predictable last year and that they need to be more versatile in their personnel packages and kind of keeping teams guessing.
615-737-1045. What do you make of that clip from the new OC of the Titans and understanding all the different situations that they were in? Now, listen, I think that you can take them in parts, right? Because there is an argument to be made that people are tired of hearing the excuses on, which is that, yeah, we didn't have any damn players. What do you want us to do? Like, how am I supposed to get anything done on third down when Dennis Daly is the left tackle? One of the worst tackles in professional football in 2022. But again, it comes back to the predictability element of it. That's the thing that they can't escape. And it's the thing that's going to, what's to stop them from running the exact same version, maybe a little bit of an elevated one under Tim Kelly, because that's what Mike Vrabel runs. Like,
Were they predictable with Arthur Smith? Like, were they predictable in the 2 years Arthur Smith was calling?
All right, so predictable in the sense that you knew they were going to run on you. I think the difference with Art, that when you talk to people who are smarter about this than I am, or many of us are, is that the amount of different work he was able to do out of the same formations, the amount of variance that he was able to have out of, okay, I'm going to run so many different things out of 11. I'm going to run so many different things out of 12. That way we can keep the same personnel on the field, but we can do a bunch of different things that's going to have your head spinning, and all of a sudden Jonu's going to be running through your secondary for 45 yards.
Yeah, but there's also an element to, there's an ironic element to the fact that the peak under Mike Vrabel, right, getting to the AFC Championship game, that just taking that postseason run, and that stretch, they were the most predictable team in the playoffs that year. It didn't matter.
It got even more predictable than run the damn ball. It was just run left.
Yeah, but it literally did not matter. Everybody in the building, everybody on the sidelines, everybody on the defense knew exactly what was coming. 8, 9-man boxes. It truly did not matter. They were the most predictable team in the NFL, and they rode it all the way to the AFC Championship.
You can do that for a year. Like, offensive lines don't last that way. At the Colts, the Cowboys, like, it doesn't work in that form or fashion. You know what I'm saying? Like, the depreciation on those things, it's almost like getting a new car off the lot, right? Like, the value of that drops off a cliff as soon as you take that thing out. And with the offensive line that they had at the time, and, Lawan missing some time at the start of the season, it taking a minute for him and Saffold to get right, and then it being one of the most unstoppable things in football for a series of games that they had no business being in, but did it anyway because they were just able to physically bully people. You can only do that for so long before there's a depreciation on the bodies. And you saw that. Lawan is a different circumstance. His knee being a liability for 2 seasons in 3 years. It's just, and really even that third year, because of how long it took him to kind of get back into the flow of things coming off the first ACL tear. But I think that predictability is all well and good, and you're right, Lucas. That's why people love that brand of Titans football. That's why people love Derrick Henry, because he was the most unstoppable thing, and that's what they associate with probably the height of this era of Titans football. It's been the greatest height that they've been able to reach with him on the roster and with Mike Vrabel as coach and all those things. But at a certain extent, you have to be able to evolve and adapt, and it's been far too long since they've shown us truly the ability to do so outside of that first Josh Dobbs game where they're having this dude drop back. I mean, what was it, 37 times or something like that? It was the most dropbacks by a Titans quarterback
in the Cowboys
in a game
yeah.
all season.
37.
And that was really the first time that we saw, okay, they're just going to come out and throw it all over the place. So, Will, what does it mean to you that your offensive coordinator didn't think you were predictable last year? 615-737-1045. We will talk about that coming up next, and we will also get into who has the final say, what the messaging has been about on the Titans roster from Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon. That's coming up next here from the Combine on 104.5 The Zone. If you've been feeling run down at the end of the day, if your energy level has been low, if your sex drive isn't the same, low T could be the thing that is bogging you down. There are decreasing T levels with men of all ages, men in their late 20s and early 30s, not just guys in their 50s and 60s like we're accustomed to thinking about. And yes, a decreasing T level can affect so many other elements of your day-to-day. Here's the good news. Your quality of life does not have to decrease due to low T. T treatments can truly change your life. Most men experience higher energy, better gains in the gym, better mental clarity, improved sleep patterns, a faster metabolism, and so much more. It's only $99 for a testosterone and PSA test for you to find out your T numbers in a matter of minutes with the Tennessee Men's Clinic. So make this the day that you start to improve your life. Call them 615-208-9090. That's 615-208-9090, or go to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com.
The Buck Reising Show is live from the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, thanks to John Roberts Nissan, Scoreboard Bar and Grill, and Dickens Turf and Landscape Supply.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back. So we played those comments for you from Tim Kelly about the predictability of the offense, or a lack of predictability in his estimation, and kind of the message that sends. It's a tough spot. Now, Lucas, you brought up, because people like Rex Oda, who we brought up earlier, who was loud wrong on his basketball opinions, and Jimmy Wyatt just attacked him mercilessly with the kind of precision that only a surgeon can display. Rex Rode tends to pepper us during the show and says, my point is that talking about predictability not being a thing is under Arthur Smith. Would you call them predictable during the 19 run? That was your contention, yeah?
Yeah, during that postseason run.
So the Baltimore game, do you remember how it was that they came to score those touchdowns?
That's a fair point, because you looked at the Khalif Raymond shot, the Jonnu Smith, the jump pass with Derrick Henry. So
Corey,
yes, they
jump pass from Derrick Henry to Corey Davis on Corey's birthday.
They used that predictability to their advantage.
No, they would get people.
Yeah.
Like they would almost lull you into a sense of security because run left works so well, and they were able to, Derek's getting the ball. You all know Derek's getting the ball. Okay, I'm just going to rip one down the field, 76 yards to Khalif Raymond.
Mash it into 9-man boxes for 30-plus yard runs, and then when defenses are lining up to desperately try and stop that over and over and over again, it was almost easy pickings for Arthur Smith. So, yeah, that's a good point. They did a better job of using that predictability to their advantage, especially in that Baltimore game, where it feels like the Patriots game, it was just straight up.
Oh, my God.
Give it to number 22.
The Patriots game was brutal. And a big touchdown catch by Ferkser. People forget in that playoff game. Now, I think the counter to, Art, being the revered one among Titans fans as far as recent offensive coordinators are concerned, is it took them 9 weeks to figure out to stop using Dion Lewis as a part of the offense. Just give the damn ball to Derrick Henry in the first place. Like, you guys, there was a strong contingent of Titans fans that, if not a majority, a loud minority, that legitimately wanted to fire Arthur Smith because of that Carolina game, and they came out with a Dion Lewis game plan in the first half and then lost in, I think, Tannehill's second start after they benched Mariota, because they won the Chargers game either in overtime or...
I don't think it went to overtime because they won on a goal line stand.
They could have gone to overtime because Melvin Gordon, they stripped Melvin Gordon on the goal line, and, Phillip Rivers faces for the end of time. They did it. I think the difference between Art and between Downing, other than, I think, the obvious lack of production, is there was evolution. Like, you felt like, okay, they were taking time to kind of figure out what it was that they were going to be. Once they figured it out, they got that rolling, and then once they were able to understand that, we can just totally bludgeon you for the majority of the game with the 250-pound running back. Yeah, we can take shots to tight ends and wide receivers, and A.J. Brown can run those crossers over the middle, and you get yards after contact, yards after the catch, and come up with the third most explosive offense in football that season. And I remember talking to Art about that heading into the COVID year when they had one of the the best offense numerically that they've had in the Titans era, and about the explosive play element and the rate that they were getting explosive plays at in 2019. It was one of the first conversations that we had with Art on Zoom, and he was like, yeah, it's kind of an anomaly. Like, that's not necessarily something that you expect is going to happen at the rate that it did for last year. You obviously prepare, you come up with plays, you diagnose things that the defense may show you at any given point, but the rate at which they were hitting on them in 19 was not, far beyond average, obviously. And then they continued to do it in 2020, which was the kind of thing that made you turn around and say, okay, they've legitimately, they're working in a good spot. And offense was up across the league that year because
no crowds.
There was no crowds. Quarterback ratings were through the roof. Offenses were through the roof. Penalties were down. It was a weird, warped season.
Trying to find, and it wouldn't tell the whole story, but stats on the teams that use play action the most and least in 2022. I'm struggling with the Wi-Fi here, but I don't know. I'd be curious to compare it to the last couple of years, and especially to when Arthur Smith was calling the shots.
Well, while you do that, let's pivot to a different kind of a discussion. And, again, you can join the conversation at any point if you would like on the Titans' offensive predictability, what Tim Kelly had to say about it, and, of course, everything else that's going on with the Tennessee Titans right now. So what's going on with the Tennessee Titans right now is they're trying to rebuild a roster. And, the question has been avoided on several different occasions about who has final say on the roster at this point, with Mike Vrabel being retained, John Robinson fired, Rand Carthon hired, and what the messaging on that has been since all of these changes were made by the controlling owner and Amy Adams Strunk. Collaboration.
18th.
What?
They used play action 18th most times in 2022.
Should I get upset with him when he just screams random things? Even as it's helpful? Like, that's a helpful number. He did a good job.
Did I ruin your train of thought?
I just
I don't even know what you were talking about.
That's
there.
what I'm saying. He just blacks out and then just screams things. As if there's not a...
You think that's not calculated?
Buddy,
you should know me better by now.
No, because it's like your car sleeping spasms. There's no predictability to it. All of a sudden, an elbow just flies and hits Kirby in the
talk
head.
about predictability. That I will give you. That I will give you.
Ham and cheese.
Thank you, Kirby. It's like every time Kirby does that, it's like he's going back to the shadows, except without the fading away. Robert, how's morale? All right, good.
It's morale.
Oh man, I feel like I've done such a bad job including you. You have to be so lonely back there.
No, Blaine's back here. We're talking about sports, talking about life, talking about being betrayed by our friends. No big deal.
we were talking about it during a break. There's not many places lonelier in this world than being a producer in a control room of a studio of a show that is on remote.
You know what? Robert's right about leaving people at home. We absolutely should have brought Blaine. And
Robert.
Mickey.
No, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. Remember who's feeding your cats, buddy.
Oh, well, yes, but that comes at a cost because from what I understand, every time you step foot in my house, you get naked. So, like, I just think at this point there's a cost-benefit analysis to this.
Well, I'm not getting paid. I have to get something out of it. So, I mean, I have to go over there. I have to see how nice your bathtub is.
I can so get paid.
If I could slosh in it, if I could how your bidet works, how far the water can shoot across the room. I have to see these things.
By the way, I'm glad Robert is making some change, but I don't think. Do you feel the need to pay people to do that? That's the thing that friends can do for one another. It doesn't have to be like a transaction. If I asked you to come watch my cat, which I don't need you to because I have an automatic feeder, then I would not pay you any money.
I feel like if somebody's going to go out of their way to do something for me, especially as often as Robert has to, because this is road trip number 15 of my year, I feel like Robert should probably be compensated.
Well, wait a minute.
I always tell Buck.
Cats are independent. Will feed themselves if you'll provide. Just leave the food for him. He'll eat when he's hungry.
No, that's not. I'm not. No, Kirby. I want somebody to be there on a daily basis because there is a routine, there is a schedule, there is a litter box. And there is a water fountain that, from time to time may or may not work.
Not to side with Buck, but I do always tell him, look, you don't have to pay me. I will get my money's worth out of stealing your family heirlooms, the money from your cash. I will compensate myself. Because he's got a ring. He's got cameras looking outside of his house, but he ain't got no cameras inside his house.
That you know of. There's a tripod. Well, no.
You easy there, buddy. I saw those tapes. Why are you using VHSs?
And why are there ratings?
I love that, instead of me, trying to be decent and making sure that you guys, every time you have to do something for me outside of the realm of your responsibility, that you're taken care of, you two bitch about it. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Why do these VHS tapes have 5-star ratings on them? This one's 2 stars.
I watch all the 1 stars. You got to find a new angle for that camera, buddy.
Oh, God. It's not terribly flattering, but I don't think anybody is in those.
He's talking about his TikTok dances, of course.
That's exactly right.
What else would we be talking about?
I truly don't know.
I have gotten questions about the amount of tripods that there are in various rooms of the house, so I should probably address that.
You also have no snacks. I've been in your house. Your snack game
is
very
snacks
weak.
Suck, man.
Oh, so weak.
I ate like
a
bag
of croutons.
It was like caramel popcorn, but it wasn't popcorn. It was like styrofoam. I don't know where the hell he gets these snacks at.
Like plant-based caramel popcorn.
There are teriyaki seaweed snacks.
I like seaweed.
I'll eat the seaweed.
which is why I keep them in a different room, because I know you're going to raid my pantry if you're in my house. The seaweed snacks are great.
I've literally eaten maybe 2 tubs of coconut oil. It's the only thing in his house worth eating.
There is coconut oil because I put that in my coffee. That's called intermittent fasting, kids. And there are power bars. What more do I need? I don't cook.
Never understood intermittent fasting.
Food would be good.
That's called Uber Eats, Curb.
You young people.
Why do I need a grocery store when they will literally bring me the food and have made it already? It's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing to do it yourself.
No.
Tastes better.
I don't have the patience. Speaking of lack of patience, who wins a tiebreaker if Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon disagree on a player? Rand Carthon was asked this question at his media availability earlier this week, and this is what he had to say.
Well, I didn't know you were going to toss to that, so
Yeah,
give me
that
a
was quick.
second and keep
That was a
talking
quick
about your
toss.
tripods and your
Quick
coconut
toss.
oils and whatnot.
I was thinking that while you were saying
lit.
that. I was like, poor Robert. Like, that's just not fair to Robert.
Well, what do you mean it's not fair? This is the segment that I told him we were going to talk about these things. One would assume that he would be paying attention to that cue and then know that that was enough lead up for me to get him to the point.
It's on you for making that assumption. We've been doing this long enough.
Brought up snacks, though, and distracted him.
Keep laughing, Buck.
We'll work through it, any tiebreaker, right? So it's not an ego thing. And again, I'm coming into this thing with the mind frame of helping him build a team in the way he wants to see it. And I'm in a learning phase of what that looks like and what that's going to be. And so if there's a tiebreaker, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But right now, we're on the same page.
So, what is that?
Oh, gross.
What is that?
I don't like that.
That's your laugh.
Is that you?
I think so. Do it again.
Did you pull that, Bert?
I did.
Oh, wait, no, that's probably the Schaefer. I think
There
that's
you go.
Schaefer. Yeah, that was a Schaefer
That's
drop.
terrible. It sounds like I'm just drowning in Kirby's cigarettes.
That's what I imagine everyone hears in St. Elmo's when you get a little nugget. Somebody's like, hey, I hear somebody's getting traded.
It's also the soundtrack to those tapes you've been watching. I think that
But Rand Carthon kind of told us, right? I mean, he keeps telling us how this works.
that it starts with Mike.
Yeah. About what he wants, the type of team that he wants to build, here to service the type of players that he wants. Like they're being very upfront about this, I feel like.
All right, play the clip again without my laugh, please.
Through it, any tiebreaker, right? So it's not an ego thing. And again, I'm coming into this thing with the mind frame of helping him build a team in the way he wants to see it. And I'm in a learning phase of what that looks like and what that's going to be. And so if there's a tiebreaker, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But right now, we're on the same page.
So if there's a tiebreaker, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So obviously they haven't gone through that process just yet. There have been subtle things done with the roster, but Bullock I don't think was necessarily obvious. I don't think anybody had that until the team released it. But 4 moves that you understood why they were being made, and I think the 3 certainly were very, very obvious of the guys that we talked about this team needing to cut to clear salary cap space. Now, beyond that, this is the first real test if we're going to get of that collaboration element. Wyatt, you weren't here for Wyatt, but he was for most of it.
Yeah, we talked a little bit of Vandy.
Right, but we were talking about earlier.
The plains to get a sandwich.
Jimmy brought up the idea that that John Robinson, at the end of his tenure here, was making decisions with less input from people in the building.
And like that was the case the entire time, or it got
towards the end of John Robinson's tenure, he
that.
was making decisions more without the input of the people who are paid to have input under John Robinson. And that was something that I had also heard towards the end as well. Now, that, I think, makes the collaboration thing ring a little bit louder in people's ears. And I think the idea that this is something that needs to be, I don't think deferential is the correct term, but that needs to, basically that the candidate they brought in needs to understand that you're going to have to work with Mike Vrabel, and this is a thing that needs to be immersive in that way. Now, does it need to be outright deferential? Does it need to be, Rand Carthon is working for Mike Vrabel? I don't think that's how this structure is set up, but it's definitely a different dynamic than it was with when John Robinson was the GM, and that was who Mike Vrabel was directly working for. That's not what this is anymore. That in and of itself is a dynamic shift that we haven't seen yet with Mike as the head coach. So I think when it comes down to who has final say, you continue to see the signs pointing towards Mike Vrabel because Rand Carthon is here. Rand Carthon even brought up John Robinson's system in place, him being familiar with the New England-ish setup that John had come from and that Rand had had previous experiences with based on prior work stops. And coming in and what he told us on the radio show, trimming the fat of the processes that exist. So it's not Rand Carthon coming in and doing things Rand Carthon's way. It's Rand Carthon adding a spin on the way that things are already being done. And I think that's the message that people need to get across the clearest, because when you keep asking these who has final say things, then they defer to, oh, if there's a tiebreaker, we'll get there. No, we already know. Like, you keep telling us it's this way.
Yeah, well, and maybe that evolves, right? Like,
oh, sure.
Like, Rand Carthon, it feels like, is very much in information gathering mode right now.
Yeah.
He talked on Tuesday about he had scouts send him 20 play tapes of certain players or certain characteristics that they need to, like, he's very much in information gathering mode on what we are looking for, what the identity of this team is and the type of player that they're looking for. And then as he learns more and gets more comfortable in a new role, that input probably grows, right?
One would imagine,
because there's just more institutional knowledge.
If it's a productive working relationship, sure.
It's like,
but what has to be done on the front end to continue to make that a productive working relationship, and how do you keep the power dynamics from skewing and from it becoming a more permanent situation than something you're going to have to, oh, okay, I've done this. Now you can earn trust, and these can be, for God's sakes, you and me, whether we trust each other or not is a different discussion.
We've talked about this. This is a circle. You remember the circle of trust, Kirby, in the Meet the Parents movies?
No.
Okay. Oh, he turned his mic up.
Do you see how he just dead-fished you? That's what you do to me all the time.
But I appreciated that.
Ham and cheese.
I have nipples, Lucas. Can you milk me?
Liam Neeson. Should Robert be allowed to speak for the rest of the radio show because of the comment? One dead fish led to another.
It's a movie quote.
Now it's just an avalanche of them.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Liam Neeson.
This is a circle of distrust we've established. But it is like any working environment, right? Like somebody coming into the picture, like let's say, the Buck Reising show is getting a new producer. And
God willing,
somebody comes in. Yeah, fingers crossed. Somebody comes in, and they don't just start changing things. Like, no, I think we should do this segment this way and this way. Like, no, I think instead of this guest, we need to start booking this guest to talk about this certain topic. Like, that evolves, and months go by when you have that institutional knowledge and that trust in that relationship to say, no, but based on the time that I've been here, and that part goes unsaid. Like, I think this might be the direction we should go in. So it feels like, and this is Rand Carthon's first draft, so maybe this draft will be much more geared towards what Mike Vrabel and scouts and coaches are looking for versus what Rand Carthon thinks about players. And then in the drafts to come, maybe that counterbalances out a little bit.
615-737-1045. Last call for phone calls as we get ready for our final segment here on day 3 of our broadcast from the Combine. We got one more to do on Friday, and a lot more discussions to be had. First workouts on the field, they start at 2 Eastern time, as a matter of fact, so right about the time that we get off air, Lucas and I don't know what Kirby's going to do, but of course he's welcome to join us. We'll shuffle over and watch a few of the workouts start to take place on the field. We'll get your last couple of phone calls coming up next. We'll update the polls. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. He doesn't know them. That's why I can't do it that way, Robert. Thank you for bringing this thing to a screeching halt out the gate. Welcome back for the final segment.
Huge thanks to John Roberts Nissan, Dickens Turf and Landscape Supply, and Scoreboard Bar and Grill for making all of this tomfoolery possible.
I just don't understand how he is so efficient with his ability to wreck the show out the gate.
Who, me?
Both of you. Like I said earlier, the way that you two just gang up on me at this point, it's exhausting.
You say it as if it's something new.
Is this what it's like to have kids? Like, this is just...
Kirby says yes.
If the kids are smarter than you, then yes.
Yes.
The kid. Hi. Smarter than me in what sense? What sense would you say that you're smarter than me?
Street smarts? Book smarts?
All of the smarts.
When Bleep goes down, Robert is surviving over all of us.
No,
And
Kirby,
Robert and Kirby.
Kirby is surviving
Robert
over
and
all of us.
Yeah, Robert and Kirby are good. You and I are screwed.
Oh, yeah. No.
Like a Last of Us situation.
Okay, but here's the thing. Like, if the world ends, I don't want to be the one that survives. Just let me go. I'm first round. Take me out. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to see.
That's no way to live.
I'll take that job.
No,
not taking you out.
That's how I heard it.
No,
Kirby's going to old
Kirby will
yeller
do-
you.
Kirby says, "I'll take."
You know what? Getting old Yeller.
We're going to take him to the farm. son.
I would prefer to be taken to the farm and put down if that was in fact
You
the
would just
scenario.
immediately lay down, like
Yeah.
you see it on the news,
Yeah.
and then it starts to go static and flicker out. You just I'm done.
I'm
just
done.
Lay down.
Tell him about the rabbits, Kirby. Just tell him about the rabbits.
They make noises.
Speaking of survival of the fittest, we have to discuss a situation that arose while we were walking to dinner the other night at St. Elmo's. So, the question, do you lime? I don't know if the terrestrial radio audience understands what that means. I don't know how many of you have been on these scooters, but many of you are deeply annoyed by their presence in our city. Well, it turns out they're everywhere, and they're a big part of, they make it easy to get around a place like Indianapolis, a place like Nashville, very much so, as long as you are aware of, like, opening car doors and things of that nature.
Dips in the sidewalk.
Dips in the sidewalk are important to avoid. So Kirby, Lucas, and myself, we are walking to St. Elmo's to enjoy a dinner of the finest sort. And there's a man who is whipping his lime scooter behind us. I would say that he was north of 270 pounds.
We don't need to get into his weight.
I think the weight matters very much.
Oh, yeah,
for
because
this
Are you a
gravity had a
carny?
big effect.
He had
All right,
places.
let's not all talk over one
He had
another.
places to be too.
Oh,
Like
he
you
was
could tell, he had a big night in front of him.
Robert, what do you want?
I'm saying, are you a carny? How could you just guess? Like, step right up. I'm going to say you're 275 and you are 28 years old. Grab a bear, ma'am.
I don't think he was quite 300 because he wasn't tall enough to be that size, but he was definitely
You're getting bogged down by the weight thing.
husky. No, the weight matters here because he was swerving. He was whipping this lime scooter in front of us, ducked around us, went to duck back,
On the sidewalk.
hit a dip in the sidewalk, a whole entire square of the sidewalk that was cut
missing.
out. This man falls over the top of his scooter, bounces with such force that the entire scope of his pants come down, and we are looking at his whole rear.
Full moon.
Full moon type
Stick it out.
situation.
Tattoo included.
There was a lovely tattoo, not like Kirby's, which he acquired last night, the prison tat, which is Lucas's name on his rear, but just a full moon type situation. The man lost it looked like a portion of his thumb. And then I will let Lucas take the rest of the comedy from here because there's only a second act that I don't think I would necessarily do justice.
Well,
to.
I think you went immediately to comedy, where Kirby and I, acknowledging that it was a comedic moment, I think there was an element of empathy involved because we just saw a
Concerned
guy
for a second because he
Absolutely.
face planted in
He
concrete.
went flying off that scooter.
He was
full moon.
Big
the
man
whole-
was moving.
Whole 9 yards. His pants were half off. He was airborne
He
and
looked like he'd
sprawled
been
out.
stiff armed by Henry.
Sprawled out on the concrete. He's getting up and just gathering himself. Oh my God! He didn't know what just happened to himself.
So Kirby and Lucas immediately defaulted
Hey,
to,
are
are you
you-
okay,
are you
bud?"
good, man?
While I'm trying to fight back laughter.
I mean, yeah, it was funny. You can realize in the moment, it's funny if he's okay. Like if he's seriously hurt, then you got to help him out. But he was good. He got roughed up a little bit. He said, "Oh, I really tore up my thumb," and he's getting up and he's just trying to gather his surroundings. And as he turns around, his sunglasses, which were very nice by the way, are on the concrete. They came flying off during the fall, and the words were on the tip of my tongue, Kirby, to say, "Hey, at least your sunglasses made it." as he turned around and his left foot made that sound, the most satisfying, crunching sound you have ever heard of a man fully stepping on both lenses of his sunglasses.
Just destroyed.
And this man was completely distraught.
So was I in the? I guess Robert, let's have you be the arbiter as a neutral observer.
Well, in that moment, it became pure unfiltered comedy.
Okay, but I want an assessment on this from a human interest standpoint. Was I in the right to completely and totally ignore this man's personal well-being and immediately pivot to comedy?
Two things here. One, Lucas and Kirby, you guys are saints. Because if I watched a big fat-ass man get the speed wobbles and totally eat it, I would have been hunched over like him laughing.
They were the speed wobbles.
It wasn't the speed wobbles. He had zipped through us.
Yeah.
Darted left and cut back right.
It went straight into the
sidewalk surfer, but he hit that place where the old newspaper stands would have been sunk down in the sidewalk and was jettisoned off that dude over the handlebars
Flying.
and just went skipping down on his face. It was
full moon.
Two, those sunglasses would have never been broken because as soon as I saw them on the ground, I would have pocketed them so fast, and they would have been in my pocket. And be like, bro, I don't even see where they went. They just asteroided off your face.
Oh, man, they must have flown into the street or something. I hope you find them.
It was bizarre because he literally stood up and planted his foot right on top of him and just destroyed
And he was gathering himself and, looking
He
for
was
it.
looking for the sunglasses,
sunglasses.
and then just
And when he turned around, he just
crunched.
completely stepped on him.
it was delightful.
Oh, at that point, it was very hard not
And
to
he
hold
was
back the
heartbroken
laughter.
more about the glasses than he was losing his left thumb.
Morale at that point, quite low. Let's wrap this nonsense up. Give me some polls. Good.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford. You can custom order any new Ford from Two Rivers below MSRP. What is the number one thing you would change about the Titans' offense? Jacoby says, it has to be the offensive line. Nothing else really matters if that is a liability.
Yep, that is the correct answer. I think, philosophically they are what they are. As long as Derrick Henry's there, we'll see what the timeline for that looks like in the near future. Whatever, but offensive line, that's the thing that's got to go.
Derek says speed at the receiver position. Flea says running on every first down.
Also that. Predictability would be a nice thing to toss out the window. Just the general semblance of an NFL passing game that makes me feel like I'm watching real football.
Who is the most famous Nashville SC minority owner? So Nashville Soccer Club announcing this morning that Giannis Antetokounmpo and his brothers have a minority stake in the club. And we know Derrick Henry already has one. They also announced Philip Forsberg is a part of that group. And then Reese Witherspoon as well was announced along with Derrick Henry last year. So between Giannis, Reese Witherspoon, Derrick Henry, and Philip Forsberg, Kirby, who is the most famous minority owner of the National Soccer Club?
Question.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. You said soccer, and I went to sleep.
Oh, God, I hate you so much. 44% say Reese Witherspoon.
Reese Witherspoon is the most famous of that group.
28% say Giannis. 26% say Henry. 2% say Forsberg.
Phil's taking the L on that one.
Do you line? 62% say no.
Yeah, that guy didn't.
Never again.
He limed out.
And then the only part we left out was because we kept walking, and then he came by us again very gingerly this time.
I don't know if it was because the scooter took on damage, but he was puttering at a much slower rate of speed.
Which former Tennessee player will have the more impressive combine workout? 74% give it to Hyatt over Cedric Tillman.
I think that's because they're excited to see the speedy wide receiver run real fast.
Those are polls.
Okay, very good. That's the show. It was a mess. We did it anyway. We survived. One more day to go. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. If you missed any of the conversations that we've had throughout the course of the week or any that we will continue to have with people up here at the Combine, make sure you check out the podcast. It is available wherever you get your podcast. Just subscribe in your favorite app to the Buck Reising Show. Blaine and Mickey going to keep you entertained. They'll have good Combine coverage because Rhett Bryan's going to join them. You can stick around for that and 3HL coming up next.